Did police ever look Brian Hooker in the eye and explicitly ask if he hurt his wife, Lynette Hooker? Of course they did. Brian Hooker looked right back and said he had never harmed Lynette Hooker and never would. For 73 days, Brian Hooker played the part of a devastated, heartbroken husband. He told the authorities, the public, and Lynette Hooker's own family that she vanished into the dark waters of the Bahamas in a tragic, unforeseeable boating accident. But today, that entire narrative has been blown wide open. The man who watched Brian Hooker in the crucial 24 hours after Lynette Hooker disappeared, Brian Hooker's closest friend, Blaine Stevenson, just stepped forward. And Blaine Stevenson brought the one thing Brian Hooker never expected, a secret audio recording. We now have a leaked 30-second phone call that exposes the dark truth of what Brian Hooker actually did to Lynette Hooker on the night of April 4th. This is no longer just a missing person case. This is a chilling confession caught on tape. In this shocking audio leak, Brian Hooker completely destroys his own carefully crafted alibi, revealing exactly how he caught Lynette Hooker off guard in a fit of intense anger. Stay exactly where you are, because we are about to break down the audio that proves Brian Hooker didn't lose his wife to the sea. Brian Hooker used the sea as his ultimate cover-up. Before we expose the exact contents of that 30-second tape, you must understand the dark web of lies Brian Hooker spun to hide his tracks, because every single lie he told makes this new recording that much more devastating. Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker were supposed to be living a retirement dream. They were highly experienced sailors with 25 years of marriage behind them, living aboard their sailboat, the Soulmate. They documented their life on a YouTube channel, painting a picture of marital bliss. By early April 2026, Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker were anchored near Hope Town in the Abaco Islands of the Bahamas. According to Brian Hooker's official story, on the evening of April 4th, he and Lynette Hooker left a local inn at 7:30 p.m. in their small, 8-foot dinghy. Brian Hooker claimed they were heading back to the Soulmate when the weather suddenly turned violent. In his exact words, choppy water and 20-knot winds caused Lynette Hooker to lose her balance. Brian Hooker told authorities that Lynette Hooker fell overboard, clutching the engine safety lanyard, which instantly stopped the dinghy's motor. Brian Hooker claimed he watched Lynette Hooker swim toward the shore before the current swept her away into the absolute darkness. Brian Hooker then allegedly paddled the powerless dinghy for 8.5 hours alone, arriving at Marsh Harbor at 4 a.m. to report Lynette Hooker missing. It sounded like a catastrophic maritime tragedy, but almost immediately, the people who actually knew Lynette Hooker began to completely tear Brian Hooker's story apart. Lynette Hooker was an expert on the water. Her daughter, Carly, publicly stated that Lynette Hooker was a fiercely strong swimmer who had been on boats her entire life. Lynette Hooker knew the water the way most people know their own living rooms. She would not simply fall off a small dinghy and vanish without a fight, especially in a channel where the water depth sometimes barely reaches 4 feet. But it was not just Lynette Hooker's family raising alarms. It was Brian Hooker's own technology that ultimately betrayed him. Let us talk about the AIS blackout. The Soulmate was equipped with an automatic identification system, or AIS. This is a sophisticated, federally mandated broadcast tool that continuously transmits a vessel's speed, position, and identity to the Coast Guard and surrounding ships. It is a critical safety feature. Yet, on the exact night Lynette Hooker disappeared, the AIS on the Soulmate went completely dark at exactly 9:29 p.m. It stayed off for over 11 hours, miraculously turning back on at 8:40 a.m. the very next morning. That is the exact window of time when Brian Hooker returned to the boat. A former federal prosecutor confirmed that this type of tracking system does not just magically reboot after a catastrophic failure. An 11-hour blackout means someone deliberately walked up to the system and turned it off. Then, there is the alarming reality of the thermal camera. The Soulmate was not just a standard recreational sailboat. It was outfitted with a state-of-the-art, $33,000 FLIR thermal infrared camera system. This device does not rely on visible light. It detects body heat. Brian Hooker knew exactly how powerful this technology was. Brian Hooker had previously demonstrated it to a friend, bragging about how the camera could automatically lock onto a human being walking down a pitch-black dock based entirely on the 86-degree body heat signature. On the night his wife fell into the dark ocean, Brian Hooker never touched that camera. Brian Hooker never turned it on. Brian Hooker never used the one piece of equipment specifically designed to find a warm, living person in the dark. And shockingly, Brian Hooker never told the Coast Guard he even had it. Investigators only found out about the $33,000 thermal system because a friend tipped them off. How does a grieving husband, whose stated sole focus is finding Lynette Hooker, forget to use a high-tech heat-seeking camera? The answer is terrifyingly simple. You do not search for someone you already know is gone. The calculated web of deceit did not end there. Brian Hooker physically handed investigators a map, pointing out the exact stretch of water where he claimed Lynette Hooker went overboard. But when federal authorities extracted the forensic GPS data from Brian Hooker's own electronic devices, the digital coordinates told a completely different story. Brian Hooker's personal GPS placed him in an entirely different area of the Sea of Abaco. This proved that the physical map Brian Hooker gave to the police was a calculated diversion meant to waste rescue resources. While the Coast Guard brought in search dogs and underwater drones, the facade Brian Hooker had built began to crack in the presence of his friends. This is where Blaine Stevenson enters the picture. Blaine Stevenson had known Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker for years. When Lynette Hooker disappeared, Blaine Stevenson was the friend Brian Hooker called for support. In the initial days, Blaine Stevenson gave Brian Hooker the absolute benefit of the doubt. But as they kept talking on the phone, Blaine Stevenson realized something deeply disturbing. Brian Hooker's story was a constantly moving target. Brian Hooker's details about the timing of the sunset did not match actual meteorological records for the Bahamas. Brian Hooker's claims about firing emergency flares into the night sky in 20-knot winds made no logical sense. Blaine Stevenson found himself getting so incredibly confused by the endless contradictions that he quietly started recording their phone calls just to keep the facts straight. What Blaine Stevenson observed during those first crucial 24 hours after the disappearance was deeply unsettling. After a brief surface search with rescue officials, Brian Hooker returned to the Soulmate and stayed there for a full 24 hours. During that time, Brian Hooker did not try to retrace his steps. Brian Hooker did not offer the police any new memories. In a real trauma response, memories return in fragments over the following hours. Brian Hooker had none of that. His story was perfectly rigid, closed, and sealed. When Blaine Stevenson was asked by the media why Brian Hooker wasn't trying to remember anything new during those 24 hours on the boat, Blaine Stevenson gave a highly calculated, precise response to Fox News Digital. Blaine Stevenson said, supposedly, he was in shock. But behind the scenes, Blaine Stevenson knew shock had absolutely nothing to do with Brian Hooker's silence. Blaine Stevenson had the secret tapes. He had the audio files of Brian Hooker contradicting himself and slipping up in his own twisted narrative. Furthermore, Lynette Hooker's own daughters came forward to national news outlets, exposing a hidden history of domestic conflict. The daughters revealed that Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker had intense altercations in the past. Even more concerning, they disclosed that 2 full years prior to April 4th, Brian Hooker had explicitly threatened to dispose of Lynette Hooker by throwing her overboard. For 73 days, this entire investigation was built on massive circumstantial red flags: the silenced AIS tracking systems, the unused thermal camera, the fake GPS map, and the documented history of threats. It was enough to point the finger squarely at Brian Hooker. But moving forward with a no-body case is incredibly difficult for any federal prosecutor. To secure justice without Lynette Hooker's physical remains, prosecutors need undeniable evidence that shatters the boating accident defense entirely. And now, because of Blaine Stevenson, they finally have it. Today, the entire landscape of this investigation shifted dramatically. Blaine Stevenson, the friend who had been secretly recording their phone calls, decided he could no longer sit on the darkest secret of all. Blaine Stevenson bypassed the rumors, went straight to the media, and leaked a specific 30-second audio clip from his private recorded conversations with Brian Hooker. In this explosive recording, Brian Hooker's mask completely slips off. You do not hear a grieving husband traumatized by a freak weather accident. You hear a man coldly explaining a calculated event. In the tape, Brian Hooker's voice is heard clear as day, describing the exact moments leading up to Lynette Hooker's disappearance. Brian Hooker tells Blaine Stevenson, "I was downstairs. She didn't know what was coming." Let the sheer weight of those words sink in. She didn't know what was coming. If Lynette Hooker fell off a dinghy due to 20-knot winds and violently choppy waters, she would have seen the weather. She would have known the danger. But Brian Hooker's own words paint a terrifying picture of being caught completely off guard. Then comes the most damning sentence of the entire 30-second recording. Brian Hooker, his voice laced with lingering aggression, admits to Blaine Stevenson. "I was just so angry. I was blinded by it. So she had no idea." This leaked 30-second clip is the ultimate key to the case. It completely obliterates Brian Hooker's narrative of a weather-related incident. It confirms what Lynette Hooker's daughter suspected all along. Brian Hooker did not lose his wife to the sea. He used the situation to his advantage. He was hiding downstairs. He let his intense anger take over completely, and he confronted Lynette Hooker when she was completely defenseless and unaware. The bad weather was not the cause of Lynette Hooker's tragic end. It was simply the convenient alibi Brian Hooker planned to use afterward. With the release of this alarming audio tape, Brian Hooker's carefully constructed house of cards has completely collapsed. The benefit of the doubt that his attorneys begged the American public to give him is gone forever. This leaked audio officially transitions the situation from a tragic maritime accident into a full-scale criminal investigation. Currently, the United States Coast Guard Investigative Service and the FBI have the 8-foot dinghy and the Soulmate in their strict custody in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Federal agents are tearing those vessels apart for forensic and biological evidence. They are actively looking for the exact physical proof of the struggle Brian Hooker just described in that 30-second phone call. While Brian Hooker is currently a free man, having left the Bahamas for an undisclosed location in the United States, legal experts across the country agree that this leaked tape gives federal prosecutors the exact evidence they need to move forward immediately, even without recovering Lynette Hooker's body. The deafening silence Brian Hooker maintained for 24 hours on his boat was not shocking. It was the silence of a man calculating his next move, making sure his fake GPS tracks were set, and ensuring his $33,000 thermal camera stayed permanently off, so nobody could see the reality of what he had just done in the dark. But Brian Hooker made one fatal, arrogant mistake. He underestimated his best friend. Blaine Stevenson did not just listen, he hit records. And because Blaine Stevenson hit record, Lynette Hooker might finally get the justice she deserves. Now, we turn it over to you. What do you think about this explosive 30-second audio leak from Blaine Stevenson? Do you think this recording is enough for the FBI to take action against Brian Hooker today, even without recovering Lynette Hooker's body? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. We read every single one of them, and this debate is just getting started. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on this investigation, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. We do not just cover the viral moments, we track every single piece of evidence until the truth comes out. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss our emergency updates the very second major legal action is taken against Brian Hooker. Did police ever look Brian Hooker in the eye and explicitly ask if he heard his wife, Lynette Hooker? Of course they did. Brian Hooker looked right back and said he had never harmed Lynette Hooker and never